Okay, this is the second part 2 of chapter 4 for your exam review, bacterial structure. So I'm going to start on page 63 of your textbook. Please be mindful and take note of the different parts of the bacterial cell that you see here. As stated earlier, bacterial cell, as you can see, does have a cytoplasm. Inside of your cytoplasm, that's where you're going to find the ribosomes. Bacterial cell does have a cell wall that maintains the shape of the cell. If you look inside of your cytoplasm, that purple circular structure that you see is your DNA. The DNA, on the other hand, is located in your nucleoid. Bacteria does not have a nucleus, so they cannot house their DNA in a nucleus, but instead they house it in a nucleoid. Also, here you have the cytoprotein synthesis that will take place here as well on the ribosome. So bacterial cells have very, very few organelles, which is why they're so simple compared to your eukaryotic cells, which are a little bit more complex, which I'm gonna talk about a little bit later. They do have a flagella. The flagella actually allows them to move around from place to place. Of course, they can transfer their DNA. So let's talk a little bit about bacteria. There are good bacteria, and you also have bad bacteria as well. Now, let's say, for example, you have a really, really severe bad bacterial infection such as strep throat. So the antibiotic that the doctor will give you, of course, is going to be streptomycin. However, what's going to make you feel better, the antibiotic streptomycin is going to combine with the ribosomes of that particular bacteria in order to kill it. So what happens is the bacteria is unable to produce any new proteins because ribosomes are responsible for the production of proteins. So you take your antibiotic, it binds to the bacteria, it destroys the ribosomes, they lose their function, and of course they can't synthesize and make more proteins. And of course that's when you actually feel better. So if you're looking at a bacteria under a microscope, they're very, very tiny to see. Of course, you're going to know some of these structures that I mentioned earlier. They do have a cell wall. They have the plasma membrane, the ribosomes, and they have the chromosomal material, which is your DNA, that's housed inside of your nucleoid. Okay? Moving on, I think this is pretty much all there is for chapter 4. But anyway, I'm going to move on. So here's your cell here. Here's your circular DNA that's housed, and there's that nucleoid right here, which is where your DNA is going to be found. All right, eukaryotic cells, on the other hand, we are a little bit more complex, okay? We have a nucleus, which is where our DNA is housed. We're much larger than the prokaryotic cells. We do have organelles that are compartmentalized, which means they occupy a specific area of the cytoplasm. And you have 4 categories of organelles: the nucleus and ribosomes, the endomembrane system, energy-related cytoskeleton, and the cytoskeleton. So this is what a typical animal cell looks like. These structures are pretty complex. In your textbook, this picture is actually in your textbook. They're showing you an animal cell on page 64, and they're showing you a plant cell on page 65. And there are some similarities there. Plant cells, when you compare the two, okay, this is your plant cell. Okay, nucleus and ribosomes. Now, if I go back to this plant cell, you will see that it does have a plasma membrane. I can't see this little bitty writing on the screen, but you can see it in your textbook, the plant cell, on page 63, it does have a plasma membrane. If you look at figure 4.8, it does have a plasma membrane. I can't see it at the bottom of because the words are just so tiny. Also, if you look back at the animal cell has a plasma membrane too, but what's so unique about the two, animal cells don't have a cell wall. Plant cells, if you look at the shape and structure and how it just seems so compact and so organized, that's because plant cells have a cell wall. Now, both plant and animal cells have a plasma membrane, but only the plant cell has a cell wall. Okay. The nucleolus, that's where your ribosomes, the cytoprotein synthesis, is going to occur there. Chromatin, which is your DNA, is also stored inside of your nucleus of both the plant and your animal cells, which are considered eukaryotes. And they're actually showing you the structure of the nucleus in your textbook. Ribosomes. Don't know if ribosomes is on your test, but the only thing that you need to remember, as I talked about earlier, ribosomes are the site for protein synthesis. The endomembrane system, of course, is a system, collective functions between the Golgi apparatus, the endoplasmic reticulum, the nuclear envelope, and of course there are vesicles. You have both transport vesicles and secretory vesicles that are involved in your endomembrane system. Smooth ER, rough ER, the Golgi apparatus. I do think the Golgi apparatus is on your exam. But what the Golgi apparatus actually does, it packages, sorts, and it exports proteins. When proteins or lipids have to leave the nucleus, they're going to go through the transport system, and they're going to get transported to the Golgi apparatus, where it's going to actually modify any proteins or lipids. It's going to package them, sort them, package them in little vesicles, and of course it's going to send them to their designated locations. Either whatever is being packaged, whether it's proteins or lipids, they're going to be transported either to the plasma membrane, or they're going to be transported somewhere else in the cell. Vacuoles, of course, a storage vacuole is found in a plant cell. You can see the large central vacuole on page 65 of your textbook. 90% of the water and other nutrients, toxins, of course, get stored in the central vacuole of the plant cell. Energy-related organelles, guys, are chloroplast and mitochondria. Mitochondria, of course, is often referred to as the powerhouse of the cell. So I'm going to get over here and talk about it. Okay, this one right here is very, very important. The mitochondria has to have ATP in order to do work. All the cellular work that occurs in our bodies is done by the mitochondria, which requires ATP. And what they actually do, mitochondria break down carbohydrates to produce ATP. Carbohydrates are foods that we consume to get our energy. So how is this energy compiled? By ATP. ATP, of course, is the energy currency of the cell. So both the chloroplast and mitochondria is required, produces ATP in order for our cells to do their work. Without ATP, our cells would not be able to do the work. Also, you're going to find a lot of cells in our body has a high number of mitochondria. those parts, cells in our bodies that require a lot of work and a lot of energy, they're going to have a great deal of a mitochondrion, because we need the energy, the ATP for it, such as your muscle cells, your quads, your hamstrings. You're going to find a great deal of mitochondrion there. Your heart cells, of course, the heart is a cell. You're going to find a great deal of mitochondria there because it takes a lot of energy to keep the heart pumping. Also, there are certain structures such as the sperm. You're going to have an abundant mitochondrion in the sperm cell, because the sperm cell has to have energy in order to propel itself to fertilize an egg. So this is where you're going to need energy here as well. The cytoskeleton, there are 3 parts responsible for maintaining the shape of your cell. And here are the 3 parts. You have your microtubules, your intermediate filaments, and you have actin filaments as well. Centrioles. Centrioles are only found in animal cells. They're not found in plant cells. Flagella. As stated earlier, cilia and flagella are needed. They're in eukaryotes for movement of the cell. So in order for an organism to move about, you're going to have cilia and flagella. Cilia are shorter and they're more numerous. Flagella, if you look at the tail, the flagella on the bacterial cell on page 63, you can see that it's longer, and of course it's going to be less numerous as well. Page 73, they're showing you, make sure you read about cilia and flagella. Cilia, guys, is found in our respiratory system. The trachea or our windpipe is where you're going to find a great deal of cilia. So cilia is important for maintaining our health. Any type of debris that can get into our respiratory system, of course, it's going to be trapped. We produce mucus, which is in our throat. The cilia, of course, is going to push the debris. It's going to combine with the mucus, and of course, it's going to help to keep the lungs clean. Any type of debris, any type of just whatever that can harm the respiratory system. And as stated earlier, you're going to have the sperm cell, of course, is going to have the flagella in order for it to fertilize the egg. You're also going to have cilia, ladies, in your uterine tube, because when you ovulate every month, the cilia provides that sweeping motion in order to move the egg through the uterine tube. So here are your 2 examples here. This information you don't need to worry about. It will not be on your exam. Okay, so this is the end. This is part 2, chapter 2, part 2 of your exam, chapter 4.